It's safe to say that Scooby Doo is one of the most iconic cartoon series of all time. Over the years, we've had many iterations and different projects. However, one film has always stood out because of how great it was and how much it changed the franchise. And that film is Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island was considered as a one-off experiment by the studio, but it ended up ushering in a new age of successful direct-to-video Scooby Doo movies, which have cemented their place in the Scooby Doo pantheon and hold a special place in many people's hearts, myself included. So today, I want to talk about the story behind Scooby Doo on Zombie Island and its underdog success. The year is 1991, and the media conglomerate Turner Broadcasting System has just purchased the animation studio and production company Hanna-Barbera. Turner Broadcasting largely did this with one goal in mind: to create a 24/7 cable channel centered around animated projects, a channel they called Cartoon Network. Hanna-Barbera was the studio behind countless iconic Saturday morning cartoons, such as The Flintstones, The Yogi Bear Show, The Jetsons, Jonny Quest, and of course, Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Once Cartoon Network officially launched the following year in 1992, reruns of Scooby Doo started receiving top ratings, which gave Scooby Doo a renewed popularity and introduced the character to a whole new generation of fans. Eventually, in 1996, Turner Broadcasting merged with Time Warner, which meant that Scooby Doo was now in the hands of the Warner Brothers. When Warner Brothers saw the resurgence of Scooby Doo, they decided to create their own project based on the character. After floating around the idea of a theatrical release, they landed on the medium of a direct-to-video feature film instead. As they were becoming more and more popular, producer and director Davis Doi was the supervising producer of the project, so he began assembling an all-star team to work on this new Scooby Doo film. First off, screenwriter Glenn Leopold was brought in to write the film, who had been with the franchise since 1979's Scooby Doo and Scrappy Doo, and he had written several Scooby Doo TV movies. Next, Jim Stenstrom was brought in to direct the film, who was also a Scooby Doo veteran, having worked on many Scooby Doo projects since 1983's The New Scooby and Scrappy Doo Show. The animation studio Mook Animation was contracted to work on the film, which had previously worked with Doi, Leopold, and Stenstrom on the shows SWAT Kats and Jonny Quest. The studio also animated 3 other Scooby Doo direct-to-video movies that followed this film. That wasn't all that was carried over from SWAT Kats and Jonny Quest, as the story for Zombie Island utilized many unused ideas from those projects. For example, the whole Werecat angle came from an old Jonny Quest script called The Curse of Cataluna. Zombie Island also had a much darker tone compared to other Scooby Doo projects that came before it. I remember this film scaring me as a kid, but that was also the appeal of it. It was breathing new life into the franchise and giving it more of an edge. During the writing process, the team also made one big decision that differed from most other Scooby Doo properties, and that was to make the monsters real. Granted, there were other Scooby Doo stories like The 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo and Scooby Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf that featured real monsters, but those monsters were portrayed more as goofballs and not villains. This time around, the villains would be real monsters. And that was even the movie's tagline.
Because this time, the monsters are real.
The team decided to go this route because they thought the mask trope was tired and old, and wanted to do something new to shake up the franchise. They also thought that for a story of this size, it was important not to cheat the audience. Model coordinator Lance Falk recounted Davis Doi saying this in an interview with Slash Film. "You can yank people's chains for about half an hour, but you can't do it for an hour and a half and have it be a fake. It feels like the end where somebody wakes up and it's a dream. It feels like a cheat." But that doesn't mean that Zombie Island doesn't have the classic mystery and villain unmasking, as there are still real humans behind the conflict. I feel like Zombie Island is a great example on how to introduce new and fresh ideas to a well-known property, while still staying true to the franchise and the source material, so longtime fans can still enjoy it. Other Scooby Doo projects should take notes. This idea of having real monsters in addition to the human villains is something that was also used in the 2002 live-action adaptation. Another big difference from the other Scooby-Doo stories is that the characters in Zombie Island are aged up. We start the story with the Mystery Gang all split up, and they reunite for this adventure. This is yet another big plot point that was reused in the live-action film. One aspect about this film that differed from a lot of other animated projects is that Zombie Island had very little studio interference. Warner Brothers really saw this project as a one-off experiment, so they stayed out of the way and allowed the team complete creative freedom. Not only did this allow the team to introduce new ideas such as the real monsters, but it also allowed the animators more time to work on the project, as there was no real set schedule, just delivery to the home video department upon completion. And as we'll discuss later in this video, this creative control led to this film being a major success. Or as Lance Falk put it in the Slash Film interview, that's what happens when you have the right people and you leave them the hell alone. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island also ushered in a new wave of voice actors for the Mystery Gang. This movie is the debut of Scott Innes' portrayal of Scooby Doo, as the original voice actor, Don Messick, sadly passed away in 1997, and the film is dedicated to his memory. The story on how Scott Innes got the role is actually pretty interesting. Innes was a disc jockey for a radio station in Louisiana, and had an afternoon show called Cartoons. In this show, he had a parody of the Alabama song Dancing, Shagging on the Boulevard, called Shaggy on the Boulevard, where he did an impression of both Shaggy and Scooby Doo. This parody became very popular among his listeners, and one day, a listener called him up and heckled him to call Hanna-Barbera and play the song. Eventually, the song hit the ears of someone who worked in Hanna-Barbera's music department, who was so impressed that he managed to secure an audition for Innes, since they were looking for someone to voice Scooby-Doo in the new movie. After a competitive audition, Innes got the role, and he would go on to voice both Scooby-Doo and Shaggy in tons of future Scooby-Doo projects.
Like, I don't know about you, Scoob, but like country music's like where it's at. Yeah, a Scooby-Doo.
Although for this film, there was a different Shaggy voice actor. Zombie Island doesn't feature the original voice actor Casey Kasem as Shaggy, which is odd, since he voiced the character both before and after this film came out. This is because in the film Shaggy eats meat, and Casey Kasem is a strict vegetarian. In most Scooby-Doo stories, Shaggy is also portrayed as a vegetarian, but for this film, we see him eating crawdads. Not only that, but around the same time in 1996, Shaggy and Scooby were used in a Burger King commercial, which Kasem also disagreed with and did not lend his voice to either. However, there were no hard feelings as Kasem would return to the character later on. Iconic voice actor Billy West would voice the character of Shaggy in this film instead. The only voice actor from the original series that reprised their role in this film was Frank Welker, aka Fred Jones. In an interview with Animation World Network, Welker tells a funny story about the behind the scenes of Zombie Island. Welker was worried that he would be replaced because the producers said his voice was much lower and wanted him to do it in a higher octave. However, Welker insisted that he was doing the voice as he always did it. So, the team looked back at the old tapes and realized his voice was pretty much the same. There's a theory that the team was misremembering how Fred sounded, because during reruns of Scooby-Doo, Cartoon Network would time compress episodes so they could squeeze in more commercials and network promotions. However, time compression speeds up the audio of the characters, which makes them sound higher pitched. So that meant they thought Freddie Jones was a tenor when his actual recorded voice is a baritone. The 90s was a weird time for Scooby-Doo. A pup named Scooby-Doo ended in 1991, and there was an attempt at a feature-length Scooby-Doo project with the TV movie Scooby-Doo in Arabian Nights. However, Scooby-Doo in Arabian Nights was less of a Scooby-Doo movie and more of a collection of different stories featuring Hanna-Barbera characters with Scooby and Shaggy in wraparound segments. So by the time Zombie Island came out, it had been 4 years without any proper Scooby-Doo content, which at the time was the longest release gap since the show's 1969 inception. That meant fans were hungry for new Scooby-Doo media, and Warner Brothers capitalized on that. Warner Brothers aided the release of the film with a $50 million promotional push. At the time, this was the biggest company-wide promotional campaign for a direct-to-video title in Warner Brothers history. They had promotional tie-ins with Wendy's, Campbell's Soup, SpaghettiOs, and many others. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island was released on September 22nd of 1998, and later released on DVD in 2001. Due to the higher cost of production, the film sold for $19.96, which was more expensive than most direct-to-video titles at the time. However, this didn't dissuade audiences, as sales for the film exceeded the studio's expectations. Although VHS sales figures aren't publicly available for the film, given that there's been over 30 direct-to-video movies that followed, I think Zombie Island probably did solid numbers. The reviews for this film were pretty great as well. It currently holds a 89% critic and an 80% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, in addition to a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb and a 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. The positive reception led to renewed public interest in the property, and many people have agreed that it kind of brought the series back from the dead, or at least ushered in a new era of Scooby Doo. The film spawned 3 more direct-to-video movies that are considered to be quasi-sequels, as they are all directed by Jim Stenstrom and were animated by Mook Animation. Those films are 1999's Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost, 2000's Scooby Doo and the Alien Invaders, and 2001's Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase. However, as the franchise went on, the creative freedom that the crew had on Zombie Island was lessened, which led to these films slightly dipping in quality as they went on. Not only did the success of Zombie Island lead to those direct-to-video movies, but Scooby's resurgence in pop culture also led to a TV show, What's New Scooby Doo, and the live-action movie, both of which came out in 2002.
Offered so much more than every other cartoon. It was so ahead of its time. It had a story. They worked hard to figure it out, and it wasn't gender specific. It wasn't a boys cartoon or a girls cartoon or any of those things.
It was a talking dog, you know what I mean? That was...
Zombie Island also got a direct sequel in 2019 with the film Scooby Doo Return to Zombie Island. However, this film is not well received and even did some weird retconning which angered a lot of fans of the original. So that's the story behind Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. It was a direct-to-video film experiment that was so successful that it spawned a resurgence in Scooby Doo media. Without the film's success, who knows what would have happened to the property. That's what happens when you get talented creators and leave them alone. Not only is it a great Scooby Doo film, but it's also just a great film in general. But what are your thoughts on Scooby Doo on Zombie Island? Or what's your favorite piece of Scooby Doo media? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Eisenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.